So I'm making a little video of my repair of my CEM60. Well, it's not really repair. I've just got a really annoying 300-second bump in my RA. I guarantee you it's because I mishandled the machine after I first got it about 3 or 4 years ago. I know I was not as fastidious as I should have been and when removing counterweights and adjusting things. And I know once or twice that little worm dragged across the RA gear. So about a year ago, I ordered the parts for my Optron when the CEM70 came out, and I thought there might not be parts for the CEM60, and I'm finally getting around to replacing both the worm and the main RA gear. So we'll see how it goes. So I figured I'd start with a little unboxing. This is the package it came shipped in. I've opened it already because it was a long time ago, but it was packed very nicely. This is just what I've left it in. Here's the main RA gear. One thing I thought was interesting was that this pin for the 0 position is still left in place. In the instructions, it talks about making sure to put that in place. So I wasn't quite sure what to make of that. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's a little bit of grease in there. And so I see the grease in there, and it's not super even, but it's on there. What I'm probably gonna do is clean this all off, and I'm gonna lube it separately. So I'll make sure to clean the entire surfaces and get it going. There's a little bit of crud right there. So I wanna make sure everything's perfectly clean. And then the worm itself, right here, nicely machined. I'm just gonna clean and inspect every bit of it to make sure there's no debris of any type anywhere in here, and then get going on it. Well, acetone didn't do the trick. I'm using some degreaser here, Simple Green. Well, here it is, all cleaned up. I went through each and every tooth, make sure it's all cleaned out. There was one tooth on here that has a little defect in it, but it's pretty minor and you can barely tell it's there. I'll see if I can pick a picture of it. It's almost impossible to see. Well, maybe that's it right there. I can't quite, you can't see on this camera. But I think she's ready to go. So here she is, getting ready for work. I added this 3D printed altitude knob to make it easier to do polar alignment. Works out pretty good. On the outside, she's in really good shape. Well, let's see what's going on the inside. Okay, so the first step are these two 4mm Allen head screws here that retain the counterweight shaft housing. They give you a great set of instructions on their website, so I'm just following along. This is a tight fit. Maybe those things have to come all the way out. I don't think so. Doesn't make any sense that they would. So you can see there's a flat milled in here, but none on that side. But that'll give you an idea where it goes. There's a little bit of grease on there, so I'm sure I'll clean that up when the time comes. Next up, there's 5 2.5mm screws that hold on the cover. This is the part where I almost invariably drop one. And it falls somewhere inaccessible in my shop. That one's being a little finicky. Uh-oh. We got ourselves a buggered head on that. That's no bueno. All right, I'm gonna have to see what's going on with this guy here. Might be a little challenge to get out. I'll go off camera so to avoid all the cursing. Well, the 5/64th Allen's head took it right out of there, so there we go. There is everything. This is the part where they recommend laying this head over. At this time, I've got it disconnected from the worm with the safety pin in. They just ask that you put in a box or something on there, so I've got this Amazon box over here I'm going to use to steady this. Maybe it's a little too tall. Yeah, it's just to make sure it doesn't go flop. So we'll work on it from there. Okay, so these has 6.3 millimeter bolts that hold it in. So let's gently take those out. These aren't torqued super tight, which I'm making note of. Just snug them in there. So this guy's a snug fit, as they say. We'll see if I can walk it off of there. Oh, she's releasing. One second here. Well, let's see what we can do here. There we go. It's a tight fit. You get her a little out of alignment, she binds up on you. Oh, I think we're hanging up on a burr right here. I can feel the burr right there. So we're gonna take a little file here. Try to knock that burr down. That's how tight a fit it is. A little burr right there. I know I'm making metal dust inside my mount, but this is all kind of be replaced and cleaned, so I'm not too worried about it right now. There's a little burr on this guy. Trying to knock that down. I think that's what we were getting hung up on. Let's see if that did a trick. So I found it useful to even out the pressure on it until I can get my hands on it. We're still hung up on that burr. Oh boy. Oh boy, I might have buggered it up pretty good there. All right. When all else fails, get some heat. I'm going to gently apply some heat, expand this aluminum a bit. Oh boy. That is a rather tight fit. Oh man, I'm so close. She wants to come out. She ain't gonna. All right, pause camera. Okay, she's out. Yeah, it took a little effort to get in there, but heating it up definitely helped. I'm definitely going to come through and clean all this up before it goes back in. There's not much in terms of grease on there. I don't know if it's greased or not. Feels like it is, but it's super light. So I might just put a little bit of super lube on there. And then we'll, when the new one goes in, here's the little sensor for the 0 pin. So the new one will go on the thusly. Okay, on to the worm. Okay, now we'll remove the RA motor cover. That one's pretty stiff all the way in. Interesting. I flipped the mount over on its side for convenience and took off the board so we can see a little better here. The instructions call out for 4 screws, but I only see 3 here, so I'm not sure where the 4th is. I wonder if it's underneath, under there. That's a little bit odd, not having access to it. Okay, the next step is to move the RA motor mount bracket. These are 2.5 millimeter Allen head bolts. And associated washer. That's going to be fun to get out of there. Alright, motor, I'm right off. I'm going to use a magnet to retrieve these things here. Okie dokie. Next we got to remove these screws here, and there's 2 more down there, so I will have to flip it back up to get access to those. These are a little fiddly to get to. I might take this board off, but I think I can get them out without having to mess with that. Of course, it fell. Okay, 4th. Okay, she's free. Not sure where she comes out. Let's get it out of there. These are some buggers here. These are little 1.5 millimeter retainers for these hinge pins that are going to have to get knocked out. And they want me to loosen them a couple of turns. But man, oh man. It's a fidgety spot, that's for sure. 1 on each side. Okay, so now I've got to drive out the hinge pin, which is located right down there. Handy to have a nice set of punches for such things. So I'm going to have to back the camera up here. Line it squarely on there. Tap, 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 tap. Out goes 1 pin. So with the hinge pins removed, instructions are to back these out. It says to push out the RA assembly. I'm not sure. And there she is. 1 worm assembly. All right. Okay, next step is to remove the encoder wheel. And snug. Okay, she's free. Next step is to release these set screws to remove the end cap. You might need to do both, so we're just gonna both. Looks like I'm gonna need a spanner. Pause. So I don't have a spanner, but I do have this here, and these are pretty loose, so. Okay, the worm is out. Bearing slides right off. Take a look at this guy. Boy, there's some crud in there. I'm gonna give it a good cleaning and then inspect it and see where my errors are coming from. And let's push the other bearing out here. Bearings feel pretty good. They don't move very much, so they oughta. Okay. So I got the old one out, cleaned it up, and put some marks on it so I don't confuse the two. I also marked the old gear with that, and I'll tell you, I don't see anything on there now. It's, you know, not as shiny, but I don't feel anything. I looked at it with magnifying glass. I don't feel any major surface irregularities that are not present in the other one. There is some wear on it, minor, but I get a 300-second bump that is not present in other friends of mine who have a CEM60. So something's going on here. The RA gear itself does all the work. I mean, whoa, that almost rolled off. All the work down here, and I didn't see anything in particular here either. You know, I cleaned it out and looked at it, and I'm not sure why it was behaving the way it was, but who knows. I'll keep this around. I think I'm going to have a second life for this in some sort of device that I need to spin something, so that's coming up. So I installed the new worm. It's just a matter of putting the bearings on there and sliding it in. Now I'm tightening these end caps, which will get tightened all the way down and then backed off a little bit. 1/16 to 1/8 of a turn. Very precise. One 1/16 to 1/8 turn. Make sure there's no gap between the worm and bearings. So now this guy, I'll back this guy out a little bit. Because I can see the bearing on this side's a little proud of the surface, so that's telling me this has got to go the other way. Yes. So we can tighten this guy up. Okay. There, that's tight. There's no play. I've got to back this out 1/16 of a turn. which I'm going to call that a 16th. I don't want any play in this. Zero play, spins freely. Good. I don't think that's quite right. There we go. Okay. Now for our motor shaft. I don't know if I've got that on the correct way. Let's take a look. Yeah, this time the right way around. Okay. So here's a little issue. This outer locking cap is supposed to be removed, but as you can see, that's not going to happen with this on here. It's easy enough to get out, but I don't see how that's going to be able to be put back on with the belt gear on there. And it says to put this in before I put that back on, and so I am a bit perplexed as to how that is actually going to work. I think what I'm going to have to do is set it and not worry about it, because it ain't going to happen that way. As you can see here, without the wheel on there, with the pulley for the belt, there's no way to get that on and off once these hinge pins are in. So I'm going to leave this side the way it was from the factory and use that side to make the adjustment. That's the only way I can see how this works. Oh, and don't forget to put the belt on. Okay, so I've slid the hinge pin in here. Just got to tapping it to get it to where it needs to be. It's a pretty easy fit. There we go. Now I will need to tighten that teeny tiny set screw down there to hold that hinge pin in place. Come on, man. So fiddly. I won't make you guys watch this. So when you're doing this, don't forget to insert the brass washers like I did. I tell you, getting this little brass washer snuck in here is quite a pain. It's a fiddly pain. Dropped it 2 or 3 times trying to slide it in there. Oh, almost lost it there too. Just no good way to get your hands in there. I'll get back when I'm done. So I got in there, now I'm just trying to get it moved over using this little pick. And it ain't easy. I'm going to have to let up on the other side a little bit. Nippers. So we're going to have to loosen this guy a little because it's a little too snug. That'll give us a little more room over here. definitely. Okay. Hinge pin. Alrighty. There we go. Hinge pin in. Okay. There's a little bit of play there. What I'm going to do, so I'm going to tighten this guy up over here. There is no play this way. So that's what we want. Now I just got to get that retainer in there. This ought to be fun. Okay, to get this outer locking cap on, you got to back out the screws for the periodic error correction sensor. Otherwise, it just doesn't fit. So that's not in the instructions, but you'll need to do it. It's almost impossible to see here, but there's a little tiny set screw right there that you got to tighten up to seal those pins in. So I'm not going to bore you with this video. So there we go. So when we go to put the new gear in, this little dot right there is going to line up, and that's the sensor for 0 position. So you just got to make sure that you put that one down, and then you'll be good. But I'm going to clean up this shaft a bit, clean it off, deburr it, and take care of some of the defects and make it harder to put on. And then when I go to put this on, I'm going to heat it up a bit so it'll slide over easier. The other thing about this is I'm only going to be greasing really the bottom, maybe 220 degrees of it. If I'm ever running the telescope up here, something's really wrong, or else I don't have a pier that it sits on. So the reality is it's a little more than, horizon to horizon, so I'll get it up to here and there. The real question I'm going to research on right now is whether I should do that after the fact or put it on before. But if I'm going to heat this up, I'm not sure if I really want to heat up the grease. So I think I'm going to grease it after it's in place. Okay, so here's where one of the RA countershock cover goes, and you can feel a noticeable burr here. So I'm going to be filing that a bit to try to get that off. And then up here, oh no, yeah, is where the top one goes. It doesn't have as much of the burr, and the burr is under here because it's not as bad, because obviously it's below the surface. So I think this one is the culprit. I have covered the worm. Apparently I should have done the cleaning of the burrs before I put the worm in, but I'll just protect them and then blow out any dust that comes. So after some filing, that's 99% gone. You can barely feel it there, but there's pretty much no burr left on it. So I think that'll work. I'm going to heat up that gear and get it on there. So I just applied a little bit of super lube around it, real light coat, because I felt there was some on there before. Okay, this is about as hot as I can handle touching it, so I'm going to see what I can do here. We are not down, we have hung up. So what I'm going to do is try to all right. Okay, she's in, dropped in there pretty easy. Just a very tiny bit of clearance there. That is it, folks. And so but that went pretty smoothly. I think getting that burr off there made a big difference. Okay, so I'm going to be tightening these down very loosely for now, just to make sure. Do it kind of like you might when you're changing a tire. Make sure they all go down even. Don't want anything to come off sideways. Then I'm going to let it cool, because I think it's important that I get these snug, not while it's so warm as it is now. I mean, obviously it's only going to shrink, you know, a fraction of a millimeter, I would imagine. But, you know, try to control the variables you can. I'm just going to get them a little snug now, then I'm going to let it cool for a bit. And once it's down to room temperature, we'll get it tightened all the way down. Okay. So we're still up here in the upper 70s. It was about 85. Oh, there we go, 80. I need to get it down about 75 to get it back to where everything else is. So give it a few more minutes. I'm going to be applying the lubrication with these little lint-free microfiber Q-tip type jobbers, which was a tip from somebody on cloudy nights. So I'll get that going in a second or two here. Okay, so I've put a little of the super lube in a bottle cap. It's clean bottle cap, and I'll just go around the horn here, just kind of gently lubing it up here. Not trying to put a whole ton in there. I'm going to try to mirror what I saw in what came from the factory. I'll just do a section at a time here on both sides, rotate, and move on from there. I won't bore you with all this. So I'm sure there'll be many schools of thought of whether I put on too much or too little. And you know, whether it's evenly applied, I'm going to go through. I see one little spot there, and I'll clean that up. But essentially, it's not really above the surface of the teeth, but just kind of in there. And I'll be cleaning up some of these little irregularities. To give you an idea of the tolerance on that, this worm picked up a little bit of grease right there, just from moving this around, a little bit that was hanging off the gear. So we don't need a lot here. So I'm just going to barely, you know, give it some. Okay, so I'm calling this good. You know, there's some on there, it's not too much, I don't think. Everybody's going to have a lot of opinions of whether this is too much or not enough. So we'll just see how it goes, but you don't need to flood it with grease. But it'll all work its way in as this thing starts working. One of the things this has taught me is that when I go to move this thing, I got to really pull this thing back tight. What I think I'm going to do is back these guys off of here. Give me a little more space. Because that way it'll a little more clearance. That way I can, oh, actually, that's as far as that guy's going to go. So that's interesting. Even if I were to back these all the way out, I can't pull it back any further. So it's really just a matter of pulling this thing back tight to make sure you're not dragging on that. It's awfully tight clearances. Okay, there she is. Cover back on. Now just to put on the counterweight shaft housing, pardon me. There's no marks or anything on how this needs to go. I just gotta kind of have to eyeball it to get it centered here. And there's some references on the body of the mount that'll help. It can also be adjusted later on. That looks pretty good right there. Boy, I tell you, doing video of these things is helpful because you can see things you missed. So I noticed the grub screw here for that ring is there, but then it was missing. I saw it as I was editing the video. I didn't even catch it when I was doing it. And of course, it had fallen out somewhere. It wasn't anywhere on my workbench here. It had fallen down below. And boy, oh boy, that was about 10 minutes on the hands and knees to find this teeny tiny little grub screw. Come on, can you come into focus for me? No, you can't. You're even too close. That guy, 1.5 millimeter Allen head grub screw. But I found it. So now it's going to go in. I can put it back together. So that's it. It's all done. Of course, when I put it on my pier and tried to power it up, I got an error saying main board not detected, which indicated there was some sort of problem with one of the wires or whatnot. After fiddling around a bit, I contacted Ioptron, which they're great. They emailed me right back, gave me some tips. Actually, I had to bring it back to the workbench. It turns out that while I was fiddling on the one side where I didn't remove the board, I inadvertently unplugged a cable that went up into the deck board housing, which I didn't notice because it's still in there. So I was able to take that apart, find the problem, plug it back in, and she's ready to go. Of course, it's daylight still here, so we'll see how it works tonight. So hopefully I'll get some good guiding results. But it was an interesting project. Sorry for the quality of the video and my hands in the way all the time, but it is what it is.